4 years we robbed banks together, and no one could ever catch us. But one day when they finally did, everyone ran, and they put all the blame on me. I was thrown in prison for 10 long years. 10 years that taught me one thing: never trust anyone. I know everything about them, every secret, every weakness. And when I got out, I knew exactly what I had to do: betray them the same way they betrayed me. An eye for an eye. I still remember the night it all went down. The red and blue sirens flashing against the wet asphalt, the distant echo of police helicopters cutting through the sky. My heart pounded like a war drum as I sprinted through the alley behind the bank. We had done this dozens of times before. We had a system, a rhythm. I thought we were untouchable. But that night something was different. The cops weren't late this time. They were already there waiting. We had barely made it out with the bags when floodlights lit us up like prey caught in a hunter's sights. Everyone panicked. Chaos erupted. The shouts of "run" mixed with the deafening crack of gunfire. I looked around for my crew, my brothers, the men I trusted with my life. But in the blur of flashing lights and tearing sirens, I saw them scatter like rats. One after another, they vanished into the darkness, leaving me exposed. And then, the hands grabbed me. The cold steel cuffs bit into my wrists. A voice shouted, "We got one." That one was me. The trial was quick. Too quick. They didn't even have to work hard to paint me as the mastermind. The evidence was stacked high, almost like it had been prepared long before the arrest. The prosecutors showed photos, blueprints, old footage of our jobs, but somehow, every piece of it pointed only to me. And my crew? My so-called family? Not a single one showed up. Worse, some testified against me. Said I was the one who planned everything, the one who forced them into it. I wanted to scream, to tear the truth out of their lying throats. But I stayed silent. Because even then, a part of me knew, words wouldn't save me. Not in this world. So they sent me away. 10 years. 10 years locked behind iron bars, treated like an animal for crimes we all shared. Prison changes a man. At first, I thought it would break me. The walls felt like they were closing in, the days blending into each other until I couldn't tell morning from night. The food was tasteless. The guards cruel. The other inmates worse. But pain has a way of carving you into something sharper. Something harder. I learned to fight. Not with fists but with patience. I kept my head down, listened, watched. Learned how men operate when they think no one's paying attention. 10 years of silence taught me how to read a liar before he even opened his mouth. And in that silence, in those endless nights staring at concrete ceilings, I thought about them. My crew. Their faces haunted me. Their laughter, their loyalty, their lies. Every scar I took in prison I wore like a reminder. Never trust anyone. The day I was released, the sun felt strange on my skin. I stepped out of those gates with nothing but a duffel bag and a fire inside me. 10 years had aged me, sharpened me, but one thing never faded: my memory. I remembered their names. I remembered their habits. I remembered their weaknesses. And I knew they hadn't stopped. Men like them don't quit. They'd still be out there pulling jobs, thinking they'd buried me forever. But I was alive. And I was coming for them. Not with rage. Not with blind revenge. No. My payback would be smarter. Cleaner. They had framed me once. Now I would frame them. That night, I sat alone in a cheap motel, staring at the city skyline. 10 years gone, yet the world hadn't changed much. Neon lights still buzzed. Sirens still wailed. People still hurried by, blind to the shadows that ruled their streets. And in those shadows, my crew still thrived. I knew where to find them. I knew exactly where to start. The first name I whispered in that motel room was Marcus Hale. Marcus was the muscle of our crew. Big, reckless, but loyal, or at least I thought. He had the kind of temper that could scare anyone into silence. In prison, I often wondered, was it him who first pointed the finger at me? Fit. He never liked taking orders. I dug around. Old contacts, people who still owed me favors, whispers in dive bars where criminals washed away their sins with cheap whiskey. And sure enough, Marcus was still in the game. Running muscle for a gang in the East District. Same brute, just older, meaner, and richer. I decided he'd be the first. Not to confront. No, not yet. But to watch. To study. For days I tailed him. Marcus hadn't changed much. Same swagger, same sharp jaw, same arrogance. But he was sloppy now. Too comfortable. He strutted into nightclubs with his men like he owned the place. He flashed money. He drank too much. He trusted too easily. And me? I stayed in the shadows. Close enough to watch. Far enough not to be seen. Every detail mattered. Where he went, who he met, what time he left. It wasn't about striking quickly. It was about striking right. The second name was harder, Elias Carter. If Marcus was the muscle, Elias was the brain. Calculated. Precise. Always the one with a plan. Always the one 2 steps ahead. If anyone orchestrated the betrayal, it was him. Finding Elias was harder. He had gone clean, at least on the surface. He now owned a high-end security firm. The irony wasn't lost on me. The man who used to break into vaults now protected them. But I knew better. I knew Elias. If he had gone legit, it was only to cover something darker. I visited his office once. From across the street, I watched him walk into the building in a tailored suit, smiling like a man who had never dirtied his hands. My fists clenched so hard my knuckles went white. But not yet. Patience. Always patience. The third name cut the deepest, Jonah Price. Jonah had been my closest friend. We grew up together, scraped our way out of the gutter side by side. He wasn't just part of the crew, he was family. Or at least I thought. When I found out Jonah had testified against me in court, something inside me died. That betrayal hurt more than the prison bars, more than the cuffs, more than the sentence itself. 10 years later, Jonah was living large. Fancy house, fancy car, wife, kids. A perfect life built on my ruin. I remember standing across the street from his home, watching his daughter run through the yard. My chest burned with anger, but also something else. A strange emptiness. He had everything. I had nothing. And yet I couldn't just storm in. This wasn't about bullets or fists. This was about making them feel what I felt. Stripped of everything. Alone. So I waited. I watched. I planned. Night after night, I pieced together the puzzle. Marcus, Elias, Jonah. My so-called brothers. My betrayers. The first step wasn't revenge, it was patience. The second was setting the stage. I needed to make them trust the shadows again. To believe they were safe. And when the time came, I'd let the truth hit them like a hammer. One night, as I sat in that dim motel room with the city lights flickering through the blinds, I sketched out the plan. Not on paper, I wasn't stupid. All in my head. A perfect trap. They framed me once. Now it was my turn. I'd make them believe they were planning the biggest job of their lives. I'd make them greedy, hungry, desperate. And then, when they walked into the vault, thinking they'd get rich again, they'd find something else waiting. Not gold. Not cash. The law. And me. But before I could set it all in motion, I needed to step back into the underworld. 10 years away was a lifetime in this business. Faces changed. Territories shifted. I had to move carefully. So I started with small things. A poker game here. A shady bar there. People didn't recognize me at first. 10 years leave scars. But the more I spoke, the more I listened, the more the whispers began. Isn't that him? The one who took the fall. Thought he was dead. No, he's back. It didn't take long for word to reach Marcus, Elias, and Jonah. And that was exactly what I wanted. The night the first message came, I was ready. A knock at my motel door. A slip of paper slid under the frame. One sentence scribbled in black ink. We need to talk. I didn't answer the note right away. That would have been too easy. Instead, I let them sweat. Let them wonder. 2 days later, another note came. Same handwriting. Same bluntness. Tomorrow. Midnight. Warehouse by the docks. Classic. Neutral ground. Easy exits. Easier ambushes. If they thought I'd come in blind, they had forgotten who I was. The night was cold, the kind that chews through your jacket and into your bones. Fog rolled heavy across the harbor, swallowing the streetlights in gray. I walked slowly, deliberately. Not sneaking. Not hiding. Let them see me coming. The warehouse loomed like a carcass, rusted steel ribs jutting into the sky. Inside, a faint glow cut through the darkness. Shadows moved. 3 of them. Marcus, Elias, Jonah. The sight of them together hit me like a punch to the gut. 10 years hadn't erased their faces from my memory. Marcus looked bigger, thicker, his beard flecked with gray. Elias was sharper than ever, his suit out of place in the grime. And Jonah. Jonah looked the same. Older, sure. But the same boy I once called my brother. That almost hurt the most. They turned as I stepped into the light. Look who crawled out of his cage, Marcus sneered. Didn't think we'd ever see you again, Elias said coolly. Jonah's eyes flickered, uncertain, almost guilty. I let the silence hang. Then I smiled. A slow, deliberate smile. You thought you buried me, I said. But I'm still here. For a moment no one spoke. The tension snapped and crackled like electricity. Elias finally broke it. We didn't come here to fight. Not yet. We came here to clear the air. I laughed. Cold. Bitter. Clear the air? You left me rotting in a cell while you walked free. You stole 10 years from me. 10 years I'll never get back. Marcus took a step forward, his fists tightening. You think you were the only one who paid? We all lost something. You just happened to get caught. I stared at him. No, Marcus. I didn't get caught. You sold me out. The words hit like a blade. Jonah looked away. Elias's jaw twitched. Marcus's face hardened, but he didn't deny it. That was all I needed. Confirmation. Proof. The anger inside me was afire, but I kept my voice level. So why am I here? I asked. Elias exchanged a glance with the others. Because things have changed. We've got a job lined up. Biggest one yet. And whether you believe it or not, we need you. I almost laughed again. They wanted me back. After everything. Perfect. I tilted my head, pretending to consider. And why would I ever trust you? Jonah finally spoke, his voice low. Because maybe this is the only way to make it right. I let his words hang. Then I stepped closer, looking each of them in the eye. You want me back? Fine. I'll hear the plan. But understand this, I lowered my voice, cold as ice. One wrong move and I won't hesitate. You cross me again and I'll bury you myself. The three of them shifted uncomfortably. They believe me. Good. Elias adjusted his tie. Then we're agreed. Tomorrow night. Same place. We'll talk details. I nodded once, turned on my heel and walked into the fog. As I left the warehouse, a storm churned inside me. They thought they were pulling me back into the game. They thought I'd forgotten. But this was never about the score. This was about the trap. 10 years in a cell had taught me patience. 10 years had given me nothing but time to plan. And now the pieces were moving. Marcus, Elias, Jonah. My so-called brothers. My betrayers. By the time I was done, they'd know exactly what it felt like to be caged. The night after our reunion, I barely slept. Not because of fear. Not because of doubt. But because I could feel the clock ticking. 10 years of silence, of hate, of hunger for justice, all narrowing down to this moment. I sat at the small wooden table in my apartment, a single lamp burning low, and pulled out a notebook. Pages already filled with scribbles from prison. Maps. Names. Patterns. I had been waiting for this chance since the day the cell door slammed shut. Now it was here. Elias would handle the brains of the operation, he always did. He would plan the job, the timing, the money trail. Marcus would be muscle, dangerous but predictable. Jonah. Jonah was the wild card. His guilt made him soft, but also made him loyal to whoever gave him a sense of belonging. I could use that. The job, they said, was the biggest one yet. I knew what that meant. Riskier, dirtier, and worth enough cash to make them greedy. Greed blinds men faster than rage ever could. The next night we met again at the docks. Same warehouse. Same stink of rust and salt water. Elias laid out blueprints on a table. A high-security cash depot disguised as a corporate office. Millions stored for redistribution, waiting for armored trucks. One night. One score. Enough to disappear forever, he said. Marcus's eyes gleamed. Jonah nodded reluctantly. And me? I leaned over the plans, pretending to study every detail, every guard rotation, every lock and camera. In truth, I was memorizing the timing, because I already knew who else would be there when the time came. After the meeting, Jonah lingered. You don't trust them, he said quietly. I raised an eyebrow. You do. He hesitated. Sometimes I wonder if we should have done things differently. That guilt again. It dripped off him like sweat. I stepped closer. Jonah, listen to me. If this job goes south, they'll hang you out to dry. Just like they did me. He swallowed hard but didn't answer. That was enough. The seed was planted. The following week was a blur of fake preparation. Masks. Gear. Weapons. Marcus tested shotguns in the dark. Elias obsessed over timing. Jonah kept quiet. And me? I made calls. Quiet, careful calls. To people I'd met in prison. To people who hated Elias's syndicate. To one very specific detective who had never stopped chasing us. I gave them everything, the blueprints, the timing, the names. All except mine. This wasn't about justice. Not the clean kind anyway. This was about balance. An eye for an eye. They put me in a cage, I'd put them in one too. The night of the job arrived. We rolled up in a stolen van, masks ready, guns loaded. My heart pounded, but not from fear. From control. From power. The depot loomed ahead, floodlights cutting through the darkness. Elias whispered the plan one last time, his voice steady. Marcus grinned, bloodthirsty. Jonah adjusted his gloves nervously. "Let's go," I said. We moved like shadows, slipping past fences, disabling alarms, cutting through steel. Years of practice made us flawless. Inside, stacks of cash gleamed under dim lights. Marcus let out a low whistle. But I barely saw the money. I saw the cage closing. We loaded the bags, hearts racing, adrenaline pumping. Then Elias gave the signal to move. But the second we stepped outside, sirens erupted. Floodlights snapped on. Shadows became soldiers. Police surrounded the building, rifles raised. "Drop your weapons." Hands in the air. Marcus froze, rage twisting his face. "What the hell?" Elias spun toward me, eyes blazing. "And Jonah?" Jonah looked at me like he already knew. I lifted my mask slowly, letting them see my face. "Come, Cole. You wanted to know if I'd come back," I said softly. "I did. Just not for the job." Marcus roared and lunged, but the cops were faster. He hit the ground, tackled hard. Elias tried to talk his way out, shouting about lawyers, but handcuffs snapped shut on his wrists. Jonah didn't fight. He just sank to his knees, staring at me through the flashing lights. The betrayal on his face almost looked like pain. But I didn't flinch. 10 years in a cage. 10 years forgotten. Now it was their turn. Hours later, as I walked away from the chaos, the night air tasted different. Cleaner. Lighter. The detective I'd tipped off caught up to me, his face unreadable. "Funny thing," he said. "Anonymous caller knew everything about this heist. Every detail. Almost like they'd been planning it themselves." I shrugged. "Guess someone wanted justice served." He studied me for a long moment, then nodded. "Whoever it was, they gave us exactly what we needed. Those men won't see daylight for a very long time." As he turned away, I allowed myself the faintest smile. It was done. Not revenge. Not justice. Something darker. Something sharper. Balance. An eye for an eye.